I just wanted to come on and meet everybody, meet some of our members, and talk to you directly about this super important topic. It's 10 years since the Rio Agreement. Unbelievable how quickly those 10 years have passed. And as we can tell through our experience of how things are changing in the world, every fraction of a degree is making a difference to our lives and, of course, to agriculture. And COP30 being hosted by the Brazilian government in Belém is a really significant moment to turn ambition into action and to call on our governments to really ramp up efforts and support the transformation of the whole economy that we need. In addition to governments playing their role, the Brazilian presidency has been really clear that climate action is a collective responsibility for all of us to deliver, and are calling upon the spirit of a global mutirão. I hope I pronounced that properly, Olivia. And the mutirão is the concept. Mutirão is the concept of a unity over division, action over delay, and legacy over inertia. And I really like the fact that the Brazilian government is emphasizing this spirit and this initiative of collective responsibility, because we can see that there is, unfortunately, a degree of inertia across society about climate action, and a degree of apprehension of, is it too late? Have we left it too late? But we know, as leading companies and organizations who work every day on these issues, that it's not, that innovations are happening, they're happening at pace, and things are really changing. So here in Bonsucro are really keen to share with you, our members and stakeholders, everything that we know, everything that we're doing to help drive that transformation, and to hear from you, our dear members and stakeholders, about what you're experiencing, what you're learning, and together we can make the change happen faster and deeper. We're really excited about the opportunity of the next 6 months. Brazil is really important, as the whole world knows, very important country for all kinds of agricultural crops, all kinds of sectors of the economy, but particularly for sugarcane. It is still the world's largest producer of sugarcane, and it makes sense that Bonsucro has a really significant footprint in Brazil. Last year, I think some 16% of all the sugarcane grown in Brazil was certified Bonsucro, which is pretty good going. So we see a real opportunity here for us and for the sugarcane sector in Brazil, but also globally, to show the world all the innovations that you're doing, that are taking place to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, in how sugarcane is being farmed and milled and processed, as well as how you're adapting to the changing climate that are affecting the crop, but also the workers. And with that being said, we're all in for COP30. We're searching around for more opportunities to tell the story of sustainability in sugarcane, to talk about the innovations. And I'm really pleased that we're hosting this online meeting as part of the inaugural Rio Climate Action Week. We have a similar week. I'm based in the Bonsucro office in London. We have a similar week in London, London Climate Action Week. And over the past 10 years, it's really picked up pace, and it's really delivering really exciting initiatives and partnerships. So I have a lot of hope for what might happen in the Rio Climate Action Week in the years to come. And we're really committed to continuing to innovate, driving change to help reduce emissions. And this session is all about introducing you to some of the work we're doing and how you can use it. So I will now pass you back to Livia and the team to take you through their presentations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Danielle. So yeah, moving along with our content here for today, just a brief introduction around Bonsucro and who we are. Probably we have people here who have just heard about us, but Bonsucro is a global nonprofit organization based in the UK, but that has also teams spread all over the main sugarcane origin countries, just like myself. And basically our main mission is to collectively drive sustainability in the sugarcane sector, both with supply side companies, but also with the demand side companies. Bonsucro congregates all the links of the sugarcane supply chain, from sugarcane farmers up until the mills who produce sugar and ethanol, but also traders, banks, refineries, and the end users, the ones that are actually consuming the sugarcane derivatives. And we want to promote sustainability across all the main countries which sugarcane is an important crop. We congregate more than 313 members in more than 50 countries all over the world. And nowadays, our footprint in terms of certified hectares of sugarcane has passed 2 million hectares all over the world, which most of it is concentrated in Brazil as our main sugarcane market. We have more than 200 certified mills that are currently following the Bonsucro standards, and we are almost reaching 8% of the global land, which is has sugarcane planted as Bonsucro certified according to the 2022 and 2023 closing. So it's quite a nice footprint that we have all over the world at the moment, but also still a lot of room for growth and for collaboration. Just a small comment that Bonsucro works with sugarcane only, so we do not cover other types of agricultural crops that more recently have been interconnected with the sugarcane one. We do work with sugarcane and all the links of the supply chain. So just also to contextualize the topic around how climate change will impact the sugarcane sector. So as an agricultural crop, we as sugarcane sector suffer with more consecutive dry days, and this can also lead to the water depletion that is directly affected by rainfall levels. So everything that is affecting rainfall levels is already directly affecting the sugarcane sector and the farmers. All the CO2 levels, they may impact also sugarcane yields. So we are already suffering year on year the more drastic and extreme weather events. So this is directly really affecting the sector around yields, but also that has an impact on the social pillar of sustainability around the workers in the field. So more frequent extreme weather events can lead to bigger health risks for workers that are there in the field with the manual activities. And here on the screen, you can see just these figures around the global biodiversity risk and the global water scarcity risk that we took from the WWF's risk filter, and we can see very clearly that the main sugarcane origin countries are directly affected by the biodiversity loss risk and the water scarcity risk. There are two sides of the coin, as we know. The sugarcane sector itself is a great producer of low carbon solutions for this world that we're living and whose climate is changing. We do produce sugar, we do produce ethanol as a very, very important biofuel, biogas, sustainable aviation fuel, lots of interesting bioenergy and bioeconomy solutions, also bioplastic that can derive from sugarcane. But there is also the other side, the more negative side of the coin, which is the sector's footprint around greenhouse gas emissions and how it has been related to especially the agriculture the agricultural phase of the sector, which annually accounts for an average of 400 million tons of CO2 equivalent coming from the farming phase. So according to Bonsucro's database, we have been collecting data around GHG emissions and also lots of other sustainability indicators. And this database shows us that the farming phase of sugarcane concentrates most of these GHG footprint when it comes to emissions. So more than 70% of the whole sugarcane sector's footprint is coming from the farming phase, and around 20-23% from the processing phase. So really, we should be focusing on more solutions and ways of reducing emissions at farm level. And this has inspired and lead the way for Bonsucro to really start producing more practical tools and practical guidelines for the sugarcane sector, really trying to reduce emissions, especially at the farm level. So these are just a few of our tools that directly relate with the mitigation, the adaptation side of climate change, starting with the Bonsucro production standard, which is a big set of sustainability, environmental, and social indicators that is applied to sugarcane farmers and mills. And this standard is a certification scheme, is a voluntary sustainability certification scheme that can be adopted by the supply side companies, as I said, sugarcane farms and mills. And it also contains thresholds on the greenhouse gas emissions, so really limits that a farm or a mill can follow in order to reduce its greenhouse gas emissions. So it really provides them a guidance on how these reductions can be achieved, not only around emissions, but also to other very key sustainability components, especially on the social side, and how this transition can be more just. The Bonsucro production standard is accompanied by a tool that we call Bonsucro calculator. Sorry about that. Just trying to use my pen here to make it easier for you to see. So the Bonsucro calculator accompanies the production standard and is really the tool that will calculate a mill or a farm's carbon footprint. So it is a very robust tool that my colleague Matt will explore in a little more detail, but it congregates also other types of indicators of sustainability, including the accounting system for greenhouse gas emissions at farm and mill level. We do also have the Bonsucro's ClimateCane Tracker, which is a more recent tool that we launched 2 years ago. And that is basically a target setting tool based on the SBTI for sugarcane. This was built using the SBTI's flag guidance, and we've made pretty much a big adaptation of the SBTI's flag guidance to the sugarcane sector. And with this tool, we want to really promote more decarbonization targets based on science for the sector. And lastly, around the existing tools that we have, we've got a lot of resources in our website and also in YouTube to build more capacity around managing heat stress. As we know, sugarcane is a very demanding crop in terms of manual work in the field in a few regions, specifically Brazil, especially in the center south. We have mechanization, which has improved a lot the work and the social aspect of the sugarcane sector in the fields. But we do have lots of other origins where the manual work in the fields is very, very intense, and workers are subject to face heat stress. So lots of trainings and protocols that we have also developed to help companies to manage heat stress at field activities. And more recently, we have been working on a few developments, but I'll probably pause now and pass the floor over to my colleague, Matt Loxton, to take us through these main tools that we have at the moment to support farmers and mills to drive more action on the ground. Over to you, Matt.
Yeah, thanks, Livia. And yeah, thanks everyone for joining. Yes, as Livia says, we'll basically dive into each of these tools in a bit more detail. And yes, so starting with the production standard and calculator. So thanks. And so basically to set the context of how are emissions addressed within the standard. So we mentioned that it includes a GHG component, but specifically within the standard, there's a criteria under 3.2, which is to monitor global warming emissions with the aim of minimizing the impacts of climate change. And so that includes a few different components within it. But basically, this is what drives most of our thinking around emissions within the production standard. So the first key points are to conduct a climate risk assessment. So that's the point of understanding what risks you face within your supply chain related to climate change. And so that could be exploring whether your region is at risk of drought or heat stress and other bits that Livia have just mentioned. We then have a requirement to have a resilience plan as well. So that's basically building up the plan of how do you address those climate risks. And then finally, on that component, there's also the climate mitigation plan. So as well as looking at the climate risk point of view, also looking at the point of view of how do I reduce my emissions over time so I don't have kind of contribute to climate change as well. And then within this criteria, there's also a series of thresholds Livia mentioned. So these are basically the emissions that you don't want to surpass during certification. And so we have that for the sugarcane, for the processed sugar, and then also for the ethanol. And these thresholds are based on kind of a series of international research, which set effectively a cap on the emissions that you want to do not want to go over. And obviously the target is always to go lower than these as well. But so for sugarcane, the number is 40 kg of CO2 equivalent per ton of sugarcane. And then it's 0.4 tons for processed sugar and 2.4 grams per megajoule of ethanol. So next slide, please, Livia. Thank you. And then, so how does the calculator fit in? And so effectively, as Livia was saying, this is the tool which is used to show conformity and areas of improvement within the Bonsucro production standard. And effectively, it collects all of the data that's used for the certification. And so this includes over 300 input indicators and over 100 output indicators across all sorts of topics, including kind of the GHG side, but then it's water, biodiversity, human rights, and other social areas as well. And specifically, as we're focusing on climate today, the calculation of the carbon footprint, which is a requirement under the standard, uses a life cycle assessment methodology, which was specifically made for sugarcane and is based on the principles of the GHG protocol. And this effectively quantifies the GHG emissions for sugarcane farmers or mills, specifically for the area which is certified within the production standard. And next slide, please. And then so diving even deeper into the calculator, specifically, we look at 83 points associated with GHG emissions to effectively do the GHG calculation. And this is across both the agricultural and milling stage. And that milling stage also includes the transportation between the farm and the mills as well. That table on the right includes some of the emissions which we consider as part of the calculation. And then so we break it down into the different scopes of 1, 2, and 3 across the agricultural phase and the milling phase. So I won't go through all of these, but effectively it looks at application, production, and transportation of fertilizers for the farm, and fuel use. In scope 2, that's more focused on all the electricity which is purchased at both the farm level and the mill level. And then on scope 3, it looks at, that's the focus on production and transportation of all of the inputs and chemicals, things used within the process. And next slide, please, Olivia. And then to set the system boundary, our calculator considers everything from cradle to factory gate, as I just mentioned. And so that diagram on the screen there kind of illustrates all of the different bits which are considered. Starting with the agricultural phase, and all the inputs there, and then transportation and milling. And then for the outputs, we look at sugar and ethanol, as well as some of the other products as well, such as molasses and associated emissions for the gas and other bits. As part of the consideration, everything is expressed in terms of CO2 equivalent, but we consider carbon dioxide, nitrous oxide, and methane within all of these calculations. Next, please. Yeah. And even further, this is kind of going over some of the other bits which are included within the methodology. So we only include direct land use change. So that's land which is directly converted to be used for sugarcane production. We also exclude biogenic emissions. So biogenic emissions, biogenic carbon, I should have specified, which is things like gas burning at the mill and cane burning at the field. So those are excluded effectively because based on the principles set out in the GHG protocol, but it's not adding to net emissions as they were biogenic. But we do consider methane and nitrous oxide emissions associated with those burnings, because that has a bigger impact. And yeah, so other sources which are accounted for, I think we may have covered in the previous one, but yeah, so we look at production, transportation of both organic and inorganic fertilizers and lime, production, transportation, and use of all of the farm inputs, so looking at pesticides and herbicides and all the chemicals applied there, and then as well as the use of nitrogen and lime, and the use of vinasse, filter cake, and agricultural waste. So that's when it's using those products. Thanks. In terms of diving a bit more into the accounting methodology, effectively we start by calculating the agricultural emissions and the land use change emissions, and that process has a threshold, as we mentioned before, of less than 40 kg CO2 equivalent per tonne of sugarcane. We then include the cane transportation emissions, so that's transporting the cane from the farm to the mill, and then add these to all of the mill emissions that we calculated. So at the end of that, we get the total emissions. We then apply an economic allocation approach to split that into ethanol and sugar, as well as doing a discount related to energy and bagasse to get the net mill emissions. And yeah, next one, please. And then so the results, effectively, this is the GHG dashboard, which is included within the calculator. And this is pretty much a summary of all of the emissions related to the user's production area. And so we have a breakdown into the different scopes of emissions, and then a further breakdown into the specific components of each of those scopes. And so for scope 1, in this example, we can see that diesel use is particularly high, along with lime and fertilizer emissions. And so this breakdown can help the user decide, understand their carbon footprint to a lot more detail, and then know which bits to prioritize for reductions. Similarly, in scope 3, for this example, you can see that the production of various chemicals and the production of fertilizers are the biggest contributor to emissions. And so again, this graph is particularly useful for users to then be able to prioritize reduction actions and understand where they can potentially reduce their emissions. Thanks, Olivia. So 5 key takeaways from the Bonsucro calculator. Firstly, is highlighting that this is a GHG inventory tool, and it calculates the carbon intensity per tonne of sugarcane, per kg of sugar, and per megajoule of ethanol, aligning with those thresholds that we discussed. If the calculator is 100% filled, if the calculator is filled for 100% of the sugarcane, this will give the total carbon footprint of the producer, so that's the mill or the farm, by scope and by source annually. But it's important to note that the calculator looks at the certified area. So the entire area would need to be certified to be the entire carbon footprint of the producer. And then another key point to highlight is, as part of the certification process, there's an annual audit And so this means that there's insurance of the emission data by a third party. And then finally, producers can use this to manage their emissions by source and adopt reduction measures. So that final GHG dashboard is really important to help understand how to make that mitigation plan. Thanks, Livia. And I think you might have been going through this section.
Yes, thank you very much, Matt. So the next tool that we would like to give you a bit more detail is around the Bonsucro ClimateCane Tracker, which is basically a target setting tool for sugarcane farms and mills. And this tool can be directly connected with the specific indicator that we have within the standard that requires companies to present climate mitigation and resilience plan. As you can see in the full indicator wording here in the screen, as part of this mitigation plan, companies that want to obtain the Bonsucro certification, they need to set baseline emissions and absolute GHG reduction targets, at least, to be in compliance with this indicator. So this tool that we are about to present you should be part of this mitigation plan in order to give the most accurate GHG reduction target for sugarcane farms. So this tool has been launched 2 years ago, and it's pretty much aimed at companies that want to set targets based on science, and specifically covering sugarcane production, so the agricultural phase only. So the target that is generated out of the completion of this tool will be applicable only to the agricultural phase only. And this tool follows the SBTi's methodology for forest, land, and agriculture companies, which is the FLAG guidance, adapted to the sugarcane reality with the right forecasts and data as well. Using this tool is very simple. As you can see here, there are basically 3 steps that the user needs to follow in order to complete the tool and generate its target. So starting with the region where your sugarcane production grows. And there in the tool, we have the most important sugarcane origins across the world. You also need to enter your production volume of sugarcane that you have in your base year and that you want to have in your target year, meaning that the tool accommodates potential production growth and the related targets that, and the emissions associated with that. You must also have data for your baseline emissions, broken down by land management emissions, land use change emissions, and also removals in case you have it. In case you don't have any of these baseline emissions for your companies, you can still use the tool by considering the default values provided further down in the Excel spreadsheet, as you can see here. The tool can also give you the emissions, baseline emissions, default baseline emissions for a given country based on your base year production of sugarcane, also broken down by those 3 components that I said: land management, land use change, and removals. And that's also something very interesting to highlight. The target setting tool also encompasses the removals component, which acts in favor of the target, as sugarcane is an agricultural crop and removes carbon from the atmosphere. This has been also included in this tool in favor of the target. So this is just a snapshot of what you will see as a result of the completion of the tool. So you will see your numbers, your baseline absolute emissions, and also the targets associated in absolute numbers. You can see also that in an intensity format as well, which is per ton of sugarcane. Here, we are just bringing you the absolute numbers, the example for the absolute numbers. So here you can see that from that previous example in the slide before, we are going from 156,000 tons of CO2. We would have to reduce it to 132K by a given target year. I think I put 2030 as the example. This would mean a total abatement of around 15%, which would be composed by 14% as actual emissions reductions that the company would have to achieve, but with around 1% removals playing in favor of these targets. So the removals can really act as enabler of the target for it to be achieved, as we are talking about an agricultural crop. The tool can also give you the annual view of the target from the base year until the target year. So your company will be able to see year by year on how much the annual emissions should be given, and also in the format of a reduction curve that you can also see as part of the target generation. And these two, by launching this tool, by really embracing the cause of promoting the more decarbonization targets in the sugarcane sector, Bonsucro also wants to promote more partnerships and collaboration within the sugarcane supply chain to reduce emissions. So from the side of producers, the use of the tracker will really help them to develop their climate mitigation plans, both for the certified, but also for the uncertified community. We really want to drive more reductions in the sector widely. But on the side of the buyers, the promotion of these two among their sugarcane suppliers, sugar ethanol suppliers, can also help them to leverage reductions in their scope 3 emissions, right? By really promoting their suppliers to have targets in place. This will have a direct effect on the scope 3 emissions reductions that the buyers can achieve. So 5 really key messages and takeaways around the tracker is one, we do consider this tool as the most science-aligned one for sugarcane companies to set GHG reduction targets, as it aligns with SBTi's flag guidance. It should be a part of the climate mitigation plan, as I said, not only to certified farmers and mills, but also to the wider community that wants to really have a plan in place to mitigate climate change. Third point is really the annual vision. I think we do think it's really, really helpful for a company to have this annual vision on how much their emissions are year by year, so that they can monitor the target more effectively. Sugarcane and sugarcane derivatives, such as sugar and ethanol buyers, they do need to encourage their suppliers to set more reduction targets through the use of the tracker. The use of the tracker is really a way for them to do that. And all this can be audited and be part of a very robust assurance mechanism that Bonsucro has as part of the voluntary annual audits that are part of our certification scheme. And this can also support the external publication of the company's decarbonization goals, assured by the robust certification scheme in place. So I think now back to you, Matt, to explore some of the new developments of Bonsucro.
Yeah, thanks, Olivia. Yes, so in terms of new developments, it's kind of an ever-changing series of tools that we have at Bonsucro. So we're always trying to expand this offering. And yeah, so jumping into the first one, as Olivia just went through the ClimateCane Tracker, this tool we found super useful, but we've been looking to expand that to cover the whole range. So if you recall, as Olivia said, this was only for the agricultural component initially. And so currently we're in the process of expanding this to include the transportation and processing phases as well. We've been taking the same approach of aligning with the SBTi methodologies and expanding this out, so there will be a single tool which allows the user to look at all emissions from farm to mill gate. And this links quite nicely with the calculator, as all of those inputs can come out of the calculator and be inputted into the ClimateCane Tracker. And so that allows the user to really address that mitigation plan component of the production standard and have a kind of a comprehensive target for the entire process. And so this is work in progress, but we expect this will be out in the early part of next year. Another area that we've been looking at is soil carbon accumulation. And so this has been an ongoing project with the aspiration of including this within the Bonsucro calculator, or working out exactly what we can account for here. We've been working with quite a few series of experts in the area, both internally and externally, with taking the approach of looking at about 30 combinations of management practices over 9 climatic regions and 6 soil types, with 2 different approaches, one of purely modeling based on the IPCC methodology to kind of model what is the potential of soil carbon accumulation related to sugarcane, and then a second approach of doing direct soil measurement, so taking soil samples to then calculate the soil carbon accumulation as well. That formula is just based on the IPCC guidelines, and yeah, it's an approach that we're taking. One of the challenges we've had with the modeling approach is there's a high degree of uncertainty. So as you can see on the right, that's a screenshot of the we'll say the drafts tool, but giving it as a range to effectively help address the uncertainty associated with removals. And we're currently in the process of integrating this into Bonsucro's work. Similarly for the early part of next year. And this very much, actually, I didn't, sorry, just back on that previous slide, Livia, I didn't give as much context for people that maybe don't work on this quite as much, but effectively soil carbon accumulation is very much looking at that removals component. And so understanding what carbon is sequestered by the soil in the growth of sugarcane, and actually accounting for that piece as well. Because at the moment, the calculator very much looks at all the emissions that are caused by growing of sugarcane, but doesn't necessarily consider that there might be some of the positives associated related to the soil if management practices are done in a sustainable way. Yeah, thanks, Livia. And then the final tool that we've been working on is the climate vulnerability and resilience tool. And so going all the way back to that slide that Livia mentioned, don't worry about finding it, but related to the adaptation plan. And so the ClimateCane Tracker very much helps to address the mitigation plan. But this piece of work is looking to address the climate risk assessment and building a resilience plan. And so we've been working with partners on an existing platform to help develop this for sugarcane specifically, which will allow the user to hone in on that specific region to understand the climate risk, whether that's being impacted by drought or heat stress or a whole number of different factors. And once they understand that risk, the tool will allow them to develop a climate resilience plan. So basically understanding which practices they should conduct to build that resilience plan and then reduce the climate risk. And so this is in partnership with Better Cotton as well. And on the right, you can see the scenarios there. So the top screenshot is looking at 2030 for Brazil in the sugar region, basically showing what some of the risks are. And effectively, the darker the color, the higher the risk. And the bottom is also 2030, but showing a resilient scenario. So effectively overlaying a series of practices, climate adaptation practices, to help reduce those risks. So it might be looking at regenerative agriculture and then showing that over time, those risks would reduce if you do those particular practices. And so this is being developed for 5 regions in sugar and 2 regions in cotton. Yeah, thanks, Livia. And then, so just to wrap up the section on all of the tools and some key messages. So firstly, it's clear that climate change is and will have a massive impact on the sugarcane industry going forward. I think we saw those maps that Livia showed at the beginning of the different risks faced. So it's clear that there will be impacts and there needs to be some changes. The industry needs to prepare itself to be more climate resilient, but also reduce the impact on the emissions at the same time by cutting GHG emissions. And our key message is measuring this is the most important starting point. If you don't know what situation you're in, you can't then manage that situation. So that's where the name of the webinar came from, was you can't measure, you can't manage, but effectively using tools like these can help understand the situation and then adapt to that. And specifically our tools, we believe, allow operators to systematically collect and analyze this data and then allow them to build climate adaptation and mitigation strategies along with action plans. Thanks, Livia. And yeah, I think wrapping up with this piece of it.
Yes, thank you very much, Matt. So we're wrapping up also by sharing this opportunity with you, which is an award that we have just launched in the run-up for COP30 in Belém. So Bonsucro is organizing this Decarbonizing the Sugarcane Sector award with the main objective to promote the use of specifically the ClimateCane Tracker for sugarcane companies, especially the supply side companies such as sugarcane farmers and sugarcane mills, to establish emission reduction targets in their sugarcane productions. We are opening it for our members to participate as eligible participants. So from producers, associations of farmers, mill groups, and everyone that is included in the sugarcane supply chains is welcome to participate. As the main criteria for this award, we want to see the level of demonstration of the use of the tool and the actual incorporation of the tracker into the business and the communication around these goals through the use of the tracker. As the prize, we're going to be offering 2 complimentary tickets to attend our flagship event next year that will take place in India, our Bonsucro Global Week. And also the winning applicants will be showcased as part of the program of our event next year, but also during our activities in Belém. Bonsucro is accredited to attend the COP, the blue zone of the COP, as an observer organization. So we're going to be there present, and the winning applicants will also be showcased during our work in Belém. And in case you would like to engage with us and collaborate with us in the run-up for COP30 here in Brazil, please do feel free to send me an email. Here's my email address, livia@bonsucro.com. I'll be happy to engage with you and see if there's any opportunity for us to collaborate pre and during COP.